Hey. How you doing? Do you want me to rock it?
Only when you're here. Hi guys.
Hey, we're going to talk about the Trump family today. And Adolf Hitler, of course. Eisenhower. Whorehouse Harriet is a good one. Americans have got a lot to be proud of. Finally, you've got someone who's got backbone. They're going to stand up and tell you the truth while it is politically correct. Now, let's go to Hitler, one of the greatest men that ever lived. Had Christ behind him, of course, and was a Catholic. And the swastika was on the Catholic Church in Austria when he was a child. And it means peace, love, and all sorts of
light and laughter, all those good things that you expect to be associated with heaven.
Now, his problem was he met a Jew when his mother had died finally, and he had to move to, was it Vienna?
Yes, he was on the streets in Vienna. And
everyone was starving, and he found that when he came across some Jews, he would try to debate with them, and he'd always win a point, but the next day he'd see them again, and they'd reverted back to the Judaistic.
It wasn't even that, it was 10 minutes. 10 minutes later,
10 minutes,
they completely wiped the conversation, and they've gone back to square one.
We spent some time in Egypt and encountered a lot of Muslims there, and 10 families can get together and build a mosque, and then they put a loudspeaker up and they call to prayer 5 times a day. So,
which was reduced from the original 5,000 times a day.
Was 5,000 times a day.
According to their traditions.
You go to a nice restaurant and they should have a sign up, beware of Muslims praying, because any time of day they'll just drop and start praying. Pray towards Mecca. And they're praying to the devil. This is the whole point. So, is there such a thing as a good Muslim? Well, of course there is. But is there such a thing as a good Muslim faith? No, there isn't. They all are looking forward to doing away with all Christianity. Now, let me say a little bit about Muslims. They all, every 3 children, males, they've got to be named Muhammad first, and then Ahmad, and then another
Abdullah for the second name.
Another name for Muhammad. They worship Muhammad to the point of extreme. Yet none will talk about. And we actually stayed in a unit which was owned by a fellow who was a guide at St. Catherine's on the Sinai Mountain. In St. Catherine's is a letter written by men who were supporters of Muhammad, because he couldn't write, and he signed it with a handprint. And in it he says that the Christian people are his people, that he will support them in a battle and do the battles for them. He would also rebuild and repair and support their churches. They could not be discriminated against if they wanted to marry a Muslim, or vice versa, a Muslim wanted to marry a Christian, and etc. He himself was married to a Coptic Christian, and his children were of the true line, of course, was promoting what Muhammad said, that Mary was the virgin who had within her the soul of God, which was to say that Mary's husband or father figure, which was God Almighty, was the father of the baby Jesus. Now that's what he said. He wrote that to the Ethiopians, Negus, I think is what they called the king of Ethiopia. And upon reading that, he converted to Islam. So the original Islam was great. However, the descendants of Muhammad who was carrying that message forward had to be murdered, and they were. And Muhammad himself was murdered by the Jews that was close by. And later, of course, this is now what we know to be as Saudi Arabia. They are Jews. They aren't Muslims, but they practice a royalty that is their name, the Saudi name.
House of Saud.
And pretend to be Muslims. And they are the ones instigating. Now, a woman could be walking down the street there, and if she exposes her ankle, she is subject to be raped. And if she complains about it, she can be beheaded. This is the Muslim faith. This is what Hillary Clinton's on about. Now, I don't know how up to speed Donald Trump is about all these kind of things. We have tried to communicate this to him, and also the fact that Christ is already back, and that was recognised by Pope Benedict. And of course he's been demonised, and anyone who goes good is demonised, like Trump. He's demonised, right? So this was the 12th of March 2013, and he wrote a letter and uploaded it to the internet. It's called In Christum Credens. Do you want to spell that for the people now?
In, I-N, Christum.
Okay, I can handle from
Christ, Latin, Christ, and it means believe in Christ.
Believe in Christ. Now that's on the internet. It's in 20 odd languages, 26, 27 languages. You just type that in and read it. This is what a pope said. Now the point is, you might think he's a child molester, and he's a murderer, and into animal sacrifice and bloody child sacrifice and everything else you want. This is all propaganda and bullshit. He's a very lovely man. I spoke to him personally. So he's a very lovely man. Now the point is, Francis sent his thugs in on April the 3rd, which is a rather ironic date, because that's the date of the crucifixion of Jesus in 33 AD. And his office was taken over by thugs, 5 thugs working for Francis. They weren't priests.
They call themselves investigators.
Investigators, they call themselves. But these people are so stupid that they were sending us emails back and forwards of what they intended to do. Now, Francis himself, of course, is a Jesuit, and a Jesuit is a Jew, because you go back to 1492, the same era as America was supposedly rediscovered. It wasn't discovered. People have been there from all over Europe. Very well known. Actually, I think the Cherokee Indians are actually Irish descent. You go there and talk to the Cherokee, and they're blonde, blue-eyed, tall, white-skinned. Hello, like Irishmen. So, cut a long story short, the 1642, the 1492 rather, all the Jews had been kicked out of all nations for animal sacrifice. No, for child sacrifice. But it is animal sacrifice because they believe that you are an animal. So what happened was, in Constantinople, the Prince of Constantinople, who was a Jew, of course, the head of the Sanhedrin, made a commandment, edict, to all Jews from that point on to become infiltrators into the Christian world. So become a priest, become a politician, become a doctor, become a pharmacist, if you like. And as a way of killing and getting even with the goy, the animal, which is you. Right? That includes Negroes, Chinamen, Indians, you name it, white people in particular. Now, if you are a Christian and you are practicing the Christian way, you have all the same love and respect from God as a newborn babe, right? Because you are doing the Jesus thing. You have Jesus as your focus. That's the whole point. Well, this is the enemy of the Jew. So, as you know, the Jews control all the banks, and when we get down to Germany, there was something like 100 and what? How many? 60 banks?
Well, this is what
That
Hitler
were
was,
Jewish.
why he rounded them up. His final solution was speculated to be Madagascar, but the Jews, again, they had infiltrated and taken over the banking system, and 160 banks in Berlin were owned by the Jews, and
Now,
the Deutsche Mark was nothing.
I have friends of mine that were in the British Army that went into the so-called death camps, and I asked them about it, and they said, well, they were work camps. And there were people who had been there for 4 years, and they were very thin, because all of Germany was starving. And what happens when people starve and you have close quarters, then you get hair lice, and the lice, in this particular case, had spread throughout the camps, and that was typhus. So typhus is a very, very deadly disease from the net in the hair. So that's why they shaved the head. And that's why Pope John Paul II, he was a salesman for the company owned by Rockefeller. It was R.G. Farber. And they developed the Zyklon B, which is a form of cyanide. And they had these little, Germans are very, very efficient, as you know. They can build in the cities, they can especially build a room that's going to keep the cyanide in, because you don't want to get gassed, even if you're a guard, right? You put the clothing of all of the people that have had the lice and you fumigate it, and then you wash it and give it back to them. So this is what actually happened. Now there are 50,000 videos on the internet about Jews that were going through the so-called death camps, where they had theatres, they had orchestras, they had their own money, they had post office where they could write back and forth. Now this is not something that you could sneer and put your face up and say it's bullshit. It's not. Because once the Jews controlled the media, they invented the Holocaust. It was 1948 when they built a sort of a half oven that was supposed to be where they burned all this 2,000 a day in Auschwitz. It's rubbish. It's all rubbish. We've been to these places, we know what we're talking about, we spoke to eyewitnesses. I'll give you some idea of the likes of Merkel. She is a Jew. And the idea is to use the Muslims as a weapon against the Christians, or the white races primarily. And that is to, if you go back in time to the time of Freemasonry, when it was sort of at its height in America. You got Albert Pike. Now he had been with the Wahlberg family, which is the Rothschilds, and they had convinced him that he's going to be the hero. And he wrote a book, I think it's Dogma or something like that.
Morals and Dogma.
Morals and Dogma. So in it he says that they're going to use the Muslim as a weapon for World War III. So we've got the likes of Angela Merkel, and if you do a head count of how many politicians in the EU, which is the beast, because I'll tell you what's the beast. It's 1 hour with the beast, right? And then you've got the darkness will pass away, biblically. So what that basically means is 1 hour is 60 years. So you take the time of the formation, 1957, of the EU, and it's got 7 departments. They're all controlled out of Belgium, and it's all communist. This is the Jews are communist.
Judaism
is communism. So what they have been able to do is take over all countries like England and say, right, the borders are open now, you've got to let people in. And they're bringing in all these Muslims. Now, if you look at any of the Muslims that are trooping into Germany in particular, up through Italy and so forth, 90% are young men, and they are men that are dedicated to the rape and destruction of the white race through the white women, and rape for a Muslim doesn't count. If you're a white woman and you get raped and you go to the police, which has been happening, they're told to stand down because it's the Jews who are in control of their parliaments through the EU. They're told to stand down. So the police, one example was a 12-year-old girl was hiding under a table in a room naked with 13 young Muslims, and the father was outside the hotel screaming his head off trying to get something done about it, and the police arrested him, disturbing the peace. No. That's what it's all about. So I don't know how far Donald Trump is up the tree when it comes to knowing what is really going on, because we've been trying to tell him for a very, very long time. Actually, we first contacted Trump the eve of his birthday in 2012, which sent a long letter. So since that time, of course, you've got he's started to run for president, and you'll see that all of the YouTubes that you go into and you click on it, now they're all attacking Donald Trump. It's amazing. Now they say he's a Nazi. Well, I hope he is, because the only form of government you should have is a party that supports the people, and that's what Hitler did. National Socialist. It's the only type of way of doing it. So if you've got the Muslims wanting to have their Sharia law, like they're doing in London now, London's finished because it's got a Muslim mayor, right? They want to bring a Sharia law, which is decapitation. Talk about decapitation in America, you go back to 1991, you've got George Bush Sr., he signed into law what is called the Noahide laws. Look at that, Noahide laws. And it is the beheading of anyone who says that they love Jesus. That's on the books. You can be beheaded. They're now trying to bring in guillotining of people for capital punishments. Right? So what they've done there is they've botched a few people that's on death row and were going to be executed, and of course it didn't work. So they think, well, it's just the nicest way to do it is beheading. Well, that's totally Jewish from the Talmud. It's Babylonian. All your troubles come from a Babylonian Talmud, which is what Jesus condemned, called a Mishnah. And this is all about you are an animal and you're put on the earth as an animal with hands to serve the Jew. And the Jews of today are genetically from Khazaria, which in 800 AD, they were so evil a tribe of 20 million people that their king decided he's got to get some sort of religion into them, because they were a serpent cult and a phallic cult. So their depravity was so gross, even he was offended. So he brought in all the religions, which was of course Muslim, Christian, and the rabbis came out of Babylon, Judaism. And he selected Judaism as being the best one for two reasons. Circumcision. Once you circumcise someone, you're in the club. You can't get out of it. You can't grow a foreskin again. So this is what they did. He brought in this terrible, terrible religion of Judaism. Now, what is a Jew? Well, they certainly aren't members of Judah. Judah is a royal tribe. If you look into your history, and sometimes you can find out, Isaiah, for example, was part of the royal family of Judah. Right? Now, Judah and the northern tribes, the 10 tribes, were at one stage battling back and forth. And in 722 AD, you have the king of Assyria. This is your Jonah prophecy, where Jonah was supposed to spend 3 days in the belly of a whale, which is bullshit. What actually happened was he was terrified that his dream that had a message was so powerful that it wasn't Jehovah showing up talking to him. It was a dream. The dream was so powerful that the message was, go tell the king of Nineveh to release the captives, because he had captured all of the 10 tribes of Israel to the north. And they were, of course, what would to be today the 10 tribes of Europe. So that's why you've got the tribe of Dan, for example, and that's Danube, the river. Right? And if you look at all of the cities and towns and national flags of these various nations, they are of the tribes of Israel. All the same thing, they're there for you to view. But the problem is that when you take a book like the King James Bible, which says in Revelation, don't alter one word of it, well, it's been altered so many times you can't get any sense of it. So, was Jesus a Jew? No, he was not. His mother, Mary, was born from Irish and Scottish and English stock, right? So Joachim was the father, he was from Ireland, of Anna, the wife of Joachim, was the mother who conceived of the Holy Ghost in the Garden of Gethsemane. They had gone there for the special purpose of bringing forth a daughter that would become the mother of the Messiah, according to the prophecies of Isaiah, who was of the royal family. So they were of the royal family, and so was all of Judah. Now in 586 AD, Nebuchadnezzar, pretty powerful, nasty sort of fellow, he decided he had enough of the rebelling of Zedekiah, who was placed in power 11 years before by Nebuchadnezzar. Just do your thing, everything will be fine. But no, he rebelled. So next thing, he's making a pact with Egypt, and they're going to go against Babylon. His grandfather was Jeremiah, also of the royal family. He was locked up in a dungeon by this evil bastard, and of course Nebuchadnezzar found out about it, and he sent his army over, captured and sent the Egyptians packing at Mount Sinai area, and then returned and put a wall up around Jerusalem outside the catapult range. Right? So naturally it's a smart thing to do, because you don't want to put it inside the range, you're going to get bloody catapults with bloody 4 or 5 bloody 100-pound rock coming at you. So they get out around it, and they stay there for 18 months, and they starve out the city. Finally, Zedekiah has to surrender. So when he surrenders, he is blinded by Nebuchadnezzar, and he has 6 children, 4 sons and 2 daughters. Now this is where it gets interesting. The 4 sons was killed before his eyes, and then he was blinded, and then taken to Babylon, where he died in a dungeon. The 2 daughters, which the Chaldean king Nebuchadnezzar, he did not think that Israel or any of the royal line would continue through the females, which is of course not the case. So after 3 years, Jeremiah, he hid the Ark of the Covenant under the actual cross itself, where Jesus would be crucified. There's a cave underneath it. That's where it ended up being hidden. So he took the two girls over to Egypt and then sailed to Spain, then through the Straits of Gibraltar and up to Ireland. Now, why to Ireland? Well, if you go back 1500 years BC, you find that the split of the royal family of Judah, one half remained, this is the branch, remained in Jerusalem to stay on the throne, and then the other half went over to Ireland, where the Irish kings, if you went to Ireland today, and you talk about, everyone knows it, right? And Hebrew was spoken, of course, because Hebrew is actually an English language. It's the oldest English language. It's not some Jewish thing that the Jews claim to be their property. It's bullshit. The Jews do not have any say in this matter whatsoever. But because the devil in man has got to manifest itself in something, so they come out in the evil of the small race of Jews that were into blood sacrifice, of drinking the blood of Christian babies. They torture them first, the endorphins get in the blood, and they get a high from drinking the blood because it's a terrible thing to do. And then some of them would eat the flesh, or in modern times, when you've got 100,000 kids missing in America every year and 150,000 in Europe every year, the children end up being put into the likes of the abattoirs, which are owned by the Jews, and go out and feed the ground up meat into the hamburgers of the...
Blood sacrifice and then cannibalism.
The most evil things they can think of, they do. This is how it works. So you think it's impossible? No. It's possible. This is what they've been doing. It's all throughout the history books, and the history books are luckily able to be hidden away for a long period of time. Then the internet digs them up, and some scholar will come up with some book of sacrifice, and they'll even have drawings of the Jews cutting a jugular vein or the groin of a child and sucking up with straws. And I thought it was very clever. They must have invented the straw 400 years ago or more. So this is what has been going on. So when you say, oh, I've got Jewish friends, I've met a fellow, a very, very smart fellow the other day. He's originally of Scottish stock. And he's going on at me and yep. So I have friends that are Jewish, and they're lovely people. Of course they are. They have to be. That's what you get taught when you go to the synagogue. Infiltrate in.
The devil wears Prada, not horns.
The devil wears Prada, that's for bloody sure. And he's circumcised. Right? So, Donald Trump, he has to be very, very careful what he says, because he might offend the Christians. In fact, Christ has got no time for Christians, in particular no time for Muslims, but the Christians are on a bad list too, because they are putting up with the bullshit that comes out of these TV evangelists that are all financed into power to support Israel. Now, there's not one Jew is of the genetic line of the people that were at the time of Jesus, who was not a Jew. He was an English descent from Cornwall, right? And his mother was indeed a virgin, and a perpetual virgin for the rest of her life. This is true. Right? There's all sorts of writings on it that is available for anybody who's got half a brain to look it up. But unfortunately, in this day of indoctrination by who controls the media, why would the Jews allow, for example, the media to rent their space to the likes of Falwell? It's because he supports the 4 books of the Old Testament. And we're not going to talk about the Genesis now, but you've got Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus and Exodus. There you've got 1,404 occasions where Moses is talking directly to God, his God. And his God is talking back to him. Get into the New Testament, and some of it remains intact. And one verse in particular says that no one's seen God. No one's talked to God. If you've seen God, you've seen me. If you heard God, you heard me, etc. So why are we saying that? Well, the blood, the soul of Jesus was the Father, because the Father cannot have a father, obviously. The Creator of all cannot have a father. But he can make a woman pregnant. It's easy. I've done it 6 times. Right? I had my eyes closed. So I think God could probably make a virgin pregnant and have himself in the blood, because your soul is in your blood. And that is why Jesus goes to the cross as the last sacrifice, the Lamb of God. So what's that mean? Well, they used to sacrifice lambs. They take a unblemished lamb, sinless was what it means. And let's say a Jew has been out raping a small child or something, and he says, well, I've now got to get forgiven for doing that. He'll take a lamb in, tell the rabbi, give him a few shekels, and he'll say, well, we'll now take your sin and put it into the blood of the innocent lamb. We'll slaughter the lamb, put the blood of the lamb on the horns of the altar, and God is so stupid he can't see your sin in the lamb's blood. Hooray! Pay you a few shekels and off you go and rape some again. This is what it's all about. Now, the stupidest of all religions has to be that one, Judaism, because first off, they're not Jews. And even if they were able to say, well, I'm related to the Jew that threw the stones at the woman caught in adultery, which was Martha, by the way, the wife of Jesus, then you can find out that he's not a Jew at all. He's an Idumean. Now, what had happened was there was a vacancy, you might say, when Nebuchadnezzar took over and destroyed the temple of Solomon. Solomon was an evil son of a bitch. Right? He used demons to help build the temple. There's books on it. There's all sorts of incantations that you can look up, and all these symbols and the various types of things that Solomon was using. And of course the high priest used up until this day of Judaism. So what were these people? Well, in the time of Jacob and Esau, they were twins. And the story goes that Esau didn't believe in the God of Jacob. And so he was demoted and renamed to Edom. So we got Jacob renamed Israel. Now the line of Israel goes from father to son, genetically. So the one whose right it is, this is a statement from your Bible, this parts of the Bible are true, and it says the one whose right it is will inherit. And he must be a key of the house of David and will rule on earth forever. Jesus talking, paradise comes to the earth. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy kingdom come. Right? What's it saying? Thy kingdom come to the earth. But you've got to reincarnate. Now, back in 312 AD, Constantine, who was an Englishman, took over the church and formed a national religion of Rome, which is a huge area. It wasn't Italy, it was much larger than it. So, what was that all about? Well, they talked about reincarnation as everyone did in those days. It's a fact. You keep on reincarnating until you get to the earth, and what happens is the soul that was released from the crucifixion of Jesus on the cross, that's why he's got the crown of thorns, the scars on the face, the spear in the side, the arms pierced, the hands pierced. It was actually the wrist, it wasn't the hand, it was the wrist, and the feet pierced. And the scourging, there was a flagrum which had 6 lead dumbbells on it, so every time you got struck once, you got 6 wounds, and they'd tear flesh out. So on the Shroud of Turin, it's totally covered with blood. So Jesus, of course, was on the cross, and what happened was the blood that's on the Shroud of Turin are the wounds. You can actually take the flagrum dumbbell from the scourging and place it against these marks on the body. But you think, well, if he's bleeding to death, what's happening? Well, the soul is running out. The soul is God the Father. Right? So, what happened? A storm, earthquake, and there was a red moon. So, the earthquake was so severe, it split the veil, which is 4 inches thick and about 30 feet high in the temple. I mean, you couldn't pull it apart with a tractor, yet it was split from head to toe, and of course the temple was half wrecked. Now, in the meantime, Jesus dying on the cross, the Last Supper, the cloth on the Last Supper on the table is the Shroud of Turin. On it today we can find with scientific means the various flowers that are on it, because the Essenes practiced healing people. They didn't eat meat, and they take flowers and they macerate them and turn them into what you would call oils, that you can buy today. It's
Essential oils.
essential oils, right? So certain parts of you require that depending on your genetic problem. So the Essenes, this is what they did. They were tall, white people wearing white robes with blue eyes. Why? They were of England. That's where they came from. In fact, when the Romans were massacring 6 million skulls you'll find are under the catacombs in Rome, and they are all British type skulls because each European nation is a little bit different. A German skull, I think many call them box heads, right, which is just a bit of a joke, but I mean the idea is that you're not quite the same. So the English skulls are the ones that have been identified, and there's 6 million of them in 300 years, which was fed into the Colosseums, right? Which is now a tourist resort. Oh, look at this and look at it.
We didn't go to the Colosseum.
We never went to the Colosseum. We didn't
Matter
go
of
to
fact,
any. No,
we ended up driving along the catacombs by mistake. Our first trip into Rome from where we were staying, and not knowing, I started to feel sick, and which is what happened when I was climbing St Michael's Tor in Glastonbury. Just inexplicably started to feel very sick. And finding out later,
It's all death.
we'd driven over the catacombs, and that's where the skulls are buried. And of course, St Michael's Tor is where Richard Whiting, the last abbot of Glastonbury, was hung, drawn, and quartered on
By
the Tor
Henry VIII.
by Henry VIII.
this is where the Colburn Bible comes in,
Yes,
because
to
he
get the
was
manuscript
defending
he was
that.
refusing
See,
to hand over.
from the age of 13 to 30, Jesus was, of course, in Glastonbury, and there was all sorts of universities there, and he taught. There were 60 universities, and people would come from as far away as India to learn there. So this is what it's all about. So the Colburn Bible is available, and it talks about what a real man is and what a real woman is. And of course, you go to war. Don't even think for a second that Jesus was practicing peace and turn the other cheek. It wasn't.
No.
He was one aggressive man. And go to war. And if someone comes up and slaps you across the face, knock them out. Right? So he wasn't a pansy type homosexuals like the idea of the famous
I call it the airy fairy.
airy fairy, if you like,
Pansy,
painting of
the
Jesus,
bullshit.
which is the soft
Which,
spoken.
and that is actually the image of the beast that everybody is worshipping, is that dude that's promoted, with, especially with the Immaculate Burning Heart in the Catholic faith. There's nothing more repugnant.
Oh.
First of all, the Catholics, they have the dead Jesus hanging on the cross with the spear going into the right side. Well, the heart has always been on the left side of the body. And in their writings, and even Wikipedia, you can go in and look it up, the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary. They've got the spear.
Ridiculous.
Now, get a load of this. This is how ridiculous and stupid it is. The Sacred and Immaculate Heart of Jesus burning with... And it's a bloody heart on fire, supposed to be for the love of all humanity. I've got news for you. There's very few on this earth that Jesus loves. Very, very few. Does he love
You have to do
all
the right thing,
humanity?
you're out of here, right?
Absolutely not.
So what's it all about? Jesus goes across the last sacrifice, because they, as I said before, they used to sacrifice a lamb with the innocent blood. They'd take the Jewish blood, Jewish sin, and put it in. And because God is so stupid, when he saw the blood on the altar, supposedly coming from a man, but in fact it's coming from a lamb. And of course, the God of Abraham is so stupid, he can't see the sin of the rabbi doing it, or the asshole that's been out raping a child. Right? That's what it's all about. So today, what do you got? You got the churches. There's 36,000 different denominations in the Christian world. 36,000. They're all right, of course. Ask them. Go through, they're right. Then you got these stupid Muslims. They've been totally taken over. They don't realise what Muhammad was on about, because the Quran's been rewritten. And they're practicing, they say Muhammad had a 9-year-old wife. He didn't. His wife was a Christian woman.
That's his
a
second
Coptic.
wife.
His first wife died. She was older than him. She was a wealthy woman. That's what got him in a position of being able to do the things he did. But primarily, when she died, he then married another woman, and that was it. They had a child at the age of 20 months. The child was murdered. 22 months, was it?
He died.
Was murdered by the Jews.
He was called Ibrahim.
Poison. So we spoke to many of these Muslims, and they are so stupid it defies belief. They're like children, every one of them. Right? And to think there is Muslim scholars that yap on about the Quran and how it's holy, it's absolute bullshit. It ain't. So you're letting Muslims come into your country because of Albert Pike, who prophesied that Third World War, it's already on, right? And they're going to bring millions of Muslims into Europe to decimate and rape the white women. And therefore, some will get pregnant, of course, and then they'll be breeding out the white Christian race. That's what it's all about. So, Donald, please wake up. Now, if you already know this, okay, now you know, I'm just telling you. Right? But that's what it's all about. As far as your daughter being married to a Jew and she becomes a Jew, she can be forgiven. Right? There are lots of Jews that can be forgiven. They've got to just turn around and start saying, well, Jesus is God in the flesh. That's all you've got to do. Now, Newt Gingrich, for example, he was born in 1943 on June the 17th, and you're on the 14th. 2.42 years younger than the Christ on the earth today. He's already here, folks. And then you've got Newt Gingrich, who's born the same date of Jesus was born in 2 BC. June the 17th. So all these numbers all fit together. So what we'll talk about tomorrow is the Great Pyramid. I can do a few diagrams and so forth, not to show you how it all come about. So with that,
Later, Gators.
later, Gators.